In this tutorial, you will learn how to match an equation to a graph or match a graph to a given equation. So these are some of the questions we'll be looking at in this tutorial. But first, you need to know a couple of things about an equation and how it's supposed to look when it's a graph. So this equation is in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and this number here, the slope number, tells you how the line will tilt. So the slope of this graph is -3. So you should be able to tell me that that means that the slope or the tilt of that drawing should be going downhill. That's a negative slope and the line should be tilting downhill. And this number here, the y-intercept number, it tells you where the line crosses the y-axis. So when you have a pair of axes like this, if you have a y-intercept of 5, you know that that point is above the origin right here. So when I describe how this line will look as a graph, I would be describing something that's tilting downhill, but also crossing above the origin at +5. So we need something that's going downhill, but is crossing above the origin. So this one's going uphill, so that's out. So these two match that type of slope. But only one of these matches this type of y-intercept. Something that crosses above the origin would be this one here. So as we're going through the questions today, you want to make sure the sentence is in y equals mx plus b form. You want to determine the slope number, the number in the m position. If it's positive, the graph should be increasing. If the number is negative, the graph should be decreasing. And then you want to focus on the number in the y-intercept position, or the b position. If it's positive, it should be crossing above the origin, and if it's negative, it should be crossing below the origin. So let's go back to those first two questions that you saw at the beginning. Let's look at the red graph on the left-hand side. I see that this graph is going uphill, and I see that this graph has a positive slope. I also see that this graph has a positive y-intercept. Even though I don't know exactly what the numbers are, I know that this graph has a positive slope and that it has a positive y-intercept. Right? So it has a positive slope and has a positive y-intercept. So as I recognize those two things, the first thing I do is start looking at the slope numbers. A has a negative slope, so that's out. B has a positive slope, so that's possible. And C has a negative slope, so that's out. That must mean that B is the correct answer. Could it have a slope of 2? Sure, it's going uphill. Could it cross the y-axis at +4? Sure, I don't see the tick marks, but that could be 4. All right, let's take a look at the green graph on the right-hand side. It looks to me like this slope is going downhill, so that's going to have a negative slope number. So when I look at my options here, A has a negative slope number, that's possible. B has a positive slope number, so I'm going to cross that off. And C has a negative slope number, so that's also possible. So now I'm going to focus on the y-intercept. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that it's negative. And only one of these has a negative number in the y-intercept position, and that's A. So this one must be the answer. Now, if I asked you to describe in words how you were able to determine the answer for question number 2, you'd have to describe both of those clues that you needed to use in order to pick one of these correct answers. So you may say, the green graph has a negative slope, and only choices A and C have negative coefficients of x. The green graph crosses the y-axis below the origin, and only choice A has a negative y-intercept. That's kind of how you would describe it. Now let's go the other way. What if I give you an equation and you have to find the matching graph? Well, let's look at the basics here. What is this telling us? It's telling us that the line is tilting uphill. It has a positive slope. So this one's out. And that one's out. C is in and D is out. A, B, and D are all tilting downhill. So that must make C the right answer. Let's try this again. Which of the following is the graph of y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5? Well, what is this telling us? Telling us that the graph is going downhill. Well, this one's not going down, this one's not going down, and that one's not going down. This is the only one that goes downhill when I read from left to right. So the answer is D. Let's try it again. Which of the following is the graph of y equals 2x plus 3? What's this telling us? It's telling us that the graph is going uphill. So this one's out, and that one's out. So now I have to go to my second clue. What's this number telling us? It's telling us that it crosses the y-axis at positive 3, which is not where this one crosses, so that's out. And it is where that one crosses, so that's the winner. So this time we had to look at both numbers in the sentence in order to determine the solution. Let's try another one. Take a look at all four. Let's focus first on the slope. What is it telling us? That the line is going downhill. Possible, not possible, not possible, possible. Now we move on to clue number 2. Where is it crossing the y-axis? At a positive number or a negative number? So the answer is D. All right, 2 more questions. Let's take a look at this equation. What is it telling us? It's going uphill. Well, every single one of these is going uphill, so that wasn't very helpful. Let's take a look at this y-intercept, -2. This one has a positive y-intercept. This one has a positive y-intercept. This one has a negative, and this one also has a negative. So now I'm going to go back to this answer. It has a slope of 6, or up 6 over 1. So then we have to start thinking, if I were to draw a couple of points along these lines, does it look like it's going up 6 over 1, up 6 over 1? Up 6 over 1, up 6 over 1. See how this one is steeper? This one looks more like up 1 over 6, right? So this one is the answer. It's more steep, and this one's more shallow. Anytime you have a shallow slope, it's generally a slope fraction. Okay, last one. We need a positive 1/2 slope. This is positive, this is positive. These are all positively sloped. So let's take a look at the second clue, which is a y-intercept of 3. This one's out. The rest of these do have a positive y-intercept, and it looks like they could all be 3. So now let's go back to our slope clue. The slope is a fraction, and it has a rise of 1 and a run of 2. And that means it's going to be quite shallow. Rise of 1, run of 2. Rise of 1, run of 2. This one is fairly steep, so I'm going to say that this one is probably out. This one is even steeper. That one's out. And fraction slopes are generally flatter. Up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. I think this one is definitely the winner. All right, hopefully you have a better understanding of how to match equations and graphs.